This is a Fox 25 Your Voice, Your Future Town Hall, the Edmond Go Bond Vote.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam King.
And I'm Wendy Suarez. Today we're taking a closer look at an issue voters in Edmond will decide on November 5th, whether to approve Edmond's $231 million general obligation bond.
And it's an issue city officials say is important to the future of Edmond, but there are many who are against that proposed vote. The bond issue includes 22 city projects, which officials say intends to improve streets, parks, and fire safety.
Fox 25's David Chazanoff tells us which parts of Edmond this would affect.
On Tuesday, November 5th, Edmond voters will decide whether to give a $231 million bond program the green light.
They vote whether or not they want to approve the funding for each one of those projects.
City spokesperson Bill Begley says if residents approve Proposition 1, $151 million would be used for 15 street projects. According to Begley, a 25-person task force picked which areas need improvements, including 2nd Street and Boulevard.
Some of the places where we see some of the most conflicts or some of the most collisions to try to make those safer and more efficient.
If question 2 passes, $70 million would go towards 6 park projects, impacting Mitch Park.
Mitch Parks, I think the focus is on the athletic fields and also on pathways and sidewalks that improve ADA accessibility and actually accessibility for everybody who visits Edmond.
Proposition 3 asks voters if they support using $10 million to replace Fire Station 3 and build a new one near Kelly Avenue and Hawthorne Lane.
This would actually allow them to staff up Fire Station 3. It would give them more equipment. It would put them in a more centralized location.
Begley says the bond passing would raise property taxes by 14%, which means there would be a $40 monthly increase for the average homeowner.
If they vote for this, yes, it will increase property taxes. It just the duration depends on how many of the questions pass.
Reporting in Edmond, David Chazanoff, Fox 25 News.
And joining us now are representatives from both sides of the issue. We invited the mayor or someone from the city of Edmond to join us today to talk about the bond vote, but they did decline.
Our guests today are Todd McInnes, who's an Edmond attorney, was a member of the task force that came up with the bond projects, and Jillian Gardner. She's the 2024 president-elect of the Edmond Board of Realtors, a group that is against the bond vote.
So Jillian, let's start. I know that property tax hike has really gotten the attention of a lot of Edmond voters.
Yes, I mean, it definitely has. And when it was brought to our attention at the Edmond Board of Realtors, you know, our mission, I just want to state up front, as the Edmond Board of Realtors, is to promote private property rights and home ownership within our community. And so we look at things from that angle. That's really where we're coming from with everything. And so when we hear from our buyers and sellers, our homeowners, that they are already really feeling the effects of things like high interest rates, things like the fact that insurance costs have almost doubled for most people in the last year. And then you've got home prices in general that have really increased over the last few years. People are really facing a lot of affordability issues. Some people aren't even able to stay in their houses right now because of the increased costs that they're experiencing. So, you know, that's where we're coming from all of this with, is that we feel like it's very difficult for us to support something that's going to continue making it less affordable for somebody to be able to live in Edmond.
And Todd, when you hear something like that 14%, we know we're investing in the city and you have to spend money to make that investment pay off, but how do you justify that when you hear so many people, or you hear those cries of people that they're feeling squeezed right now and now they might have the chance to feel it a little bit more?
Yeah, it's not insignificant. I was chairman of the task force that went through this entire process. The idea of affordability came up. That's one of the reasons that sales tax was excluded as an option, because it's such a regressive tax on those that make less money. So the idea was, well, how do we get the point that the beneficiaries of the infrastructure, the beneficiaries of the fire and safety, they pay some of that? And so those are the property owners. So the average Edmond property since 2000 has tripled in value, yet we have the lowest sales tax and the second lowest property tax in the metro. Sooner or later, those are not compatible. And it's never a good time to do projects like this. But Edmond has gone for so long with just sales tax that they're the only city in Oklahoma anywhere near their size that does it with that funding mechanism. And there needed to be a solution. The cost of the city to do projects has not gone down either. And it is unfortunate that we can't just make it happen without money. But there is a cost. The property owners benefit with increased property values. So we believe it's fair that they shoulder the burden for that.
So voters will actually have 3 propositions to vote on, right? And if any of them pass, those property taxes are going to go up, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so the way the ballot is set up by state law, there's 3 questions. One is public safety, one is quality of life, and the other one is infrastructure, the roads. So if 1, 2, or 3 of those pass, the millage rate will be adjusted. Now the term of the bond will be much shorter if only 1 passes or only 2 of them. The idea of them all 3 passing, the idea is that the bond would be a 10-year bond, but it's based on a conservative growth rate, so you're probably looking at a 7 to 8 year bond if all 3 of those pass.
Was there any part of this that you did support or that you could get behind?
So I think at the end of the day, what we really want to communicate is that the Edmond Board of Realtors supports the projects in general. The projects that are there, we absolutely believe are needed in Edmond and will be beneficial to everyone living there. It's just we don't support the method of funding to get there. So, you know, I think we could probably get into some of the inner workings of each one of the projects, but they're all beneficial to Edmond. And some maybe more so than others. And we would love to sit down after this, if it does not pass, and talk about ways that we could get there in the future and kind of be a part of that. We don't feel it's really our responsibility as the Edmond Board of Realtors to come up with all the solutions for the city.
So let's talk about who did.
You
We
know.
had this advisory board that, Todd, you were on, along with a number of other appointees. There's been some criticism that this board was made up of insiders, people who stand to benefit from this passing. What is your response to that question of your integrity?
Yeah, well, my question of my integrity, I don't doubt that anybody can say anything they want. Anybody that has a typewriter or a computer can send a letter. Here's the problem with that. The task force was made up of 25 Edmond citizens. All 25 volunteered their time. All 25 applied to be on that task force. We had a former superintendent, we have small business owners, we had realtors, we had builders, we had people in the private sector and people in the public sector. The one person that didn't apply to be on that tends to be the person who wrote the letter complaining about it. So it's unfortunate you can criticize the integrity of everybody involved, but it was an open process. We had 4 meetings that were subject to the open records requirements. We had 2.5 hours at each meeting. The city council met on August 12th and approved the package, and at no point did any citizen show up and complain about the process. But yet, here we are right before the eve of the election, and someone doesn't like it, and so they'll throw anything against the wall to see what sticks. That's really what it is. Because if not, you're saying everybody in the process is compromised. Everybody that applied to be involved wasted their time through some large conspiracy to try to stick it to the voter. And it's just unfortunate that that gets news today, and it's unfortunate that that person doesn't want to answer the questions in public.
Well, you did have, even when we started this conversation, you talked about beneficiaries, whether it was some of the residents of Edmond or people who would be impacted by this. But when you look at that committee, there's a lot of businesses that are going to have a positive impact. And I think it's a little easier to ask some of those business members that are on the committee and some of those contractors to have a 14% property tax hike when they're going to be sort of getting some money on the back end because they'll be involved directly in some of these projects. So it's going to hurt them a little less.
Well, so let me ask about myself. Why am I on there? You know, I'm an attorney. I practiced law in Edmond for 30 years. I've owned a house in Edmond since 1995. My partners and I have some rental property. My children don't go to the Edmond Public Schools. They're out of my house. They're out of college. So why did I use my time and effort to do that? Why am I saying it's okay to tax me for a benefit that I will not receive directly? Now, indirectly, I will, because the rising tide lifts all boats, right? We have better parks, we have better infrastructure, we have better fire and police. Then my property is going to go up because people are going to still want to come to Edmond. So I don't think anybody on that task force, of the 25 people, you could say, hey, that woman or that man is doing it because they have some back-end deal.
Yeah, we're certainly not saying that. It's just drawing into question when you do have contractors and developers who are under contract with the city making these decisions, it sparks a little bit of controversy and questions. And I think, have you been hearing questions about the process?
I don't think that it is our place as the Edmond Board of Realtors, and that's the hat that I'm wearing today, is to in any way question any of that. To be honest, it has nothing to do with why we chose to not support the GO bond. We did not look back at who's a part of this and decide, oh, that's a reason for us to not support it. So you can feel free to look into it and form your own opinions, but that is not the reason that the Edmond Board of Realtors is not supporting it.
Has the messaging been educational for voters out there? Do you feel like people in Edmond have all the facts, or do they have maybe not enough information or wrong information?
I think personally that maybe up front there was not enough information, and that's probably the reason why, in my opinion, that people weren't there maybe advocating against it up front because there wasn't enough information about what really it was going to mean. And I also think that possibly in other communities where GO bonds have been passed, that maybe there wasn't enough information in those situations either, or anyone mobilizing against it, or perhaps there was not the same kind of economy that we're facing right now that are causing it to be a little bit more difficult to justify the cost of another increase on people.
Yeah. Todd, what's your take on that? How's the information been, getting the information, just the facts out to the voters?
You know, if someone could figure out how to get all the voters informed, I would sign up for whatever that system is. I get approached in the grocery store or at whatever event I might be at, and they ask questions. It's like, I thought everybody knew that, right? And so, unfortunately, the ability to communicate factually, and I appreciate that with the Board of Realtors or anybody else, it's like, how do we make sure everybody has the information so they can make their own decision? When we got involved with the task force, or when I did, I knew my role ended basically when it went to the vote of the people. That's who's going to decide this. It's not Todd McInnes and whether or not he benefits from it or not. And so how do we figure out? We had the city of Edmond is not allowed to campaign, right? So they can only educate. We saw that recently with the city of Oklahoma City when Mayor David Holt was advocating for the hotel property tax, right? He can't use taxpayer dollars to advocate. We understand that. School board, same thing. Same thing with the city of Edmond. So we have a side group that's all privately funded that is trying to say vote yes. The city of Edmond is spending a lot of time and effort trying to get the information out. They have a wonderful website that's purely factual.
Yeah, the city has spent, just want to let our viewers know, the city has spent over $70,000 on a PR contract with a firm to help get the word out. Have they done an effective job?
I guess I don't know if we'll ever know if they did an effective job because they're not advocating to vote yes or no. So the result of the election will not tell you if that PR firm did a good job. I think post-election, ask people that leave the ballot and ask them, hey, why did you vote for this? And we'll find out if they learned anything in the process or not. It's complicated. Nothing about this is simple. There's a reason so many other cities have done this before. Edmond is just now entering that fray, and the first time you try to do this is clearly the most difficult. You're educating people. We saw in Piedmont a bond failed just a couple months ago. So it's not easy. It's not simple because you're not even taxed on your property value. You're taxed on your assessed value. So when someone says, what are my taxes going to be because of this? You can tell them a millage rate, you can tell them this increase, but they're thinking what their property's worth, and that's not how your property's taxed. So even that is complicated, right? We could waste our time today, and I could remind you, because I learned myself 60 days ago, how the county assessor goes from the market value of my property to what I pay at the end of the year. And it is not a simple system.
Right.
And I can't imagine trying to educate anybody. When I try to explain it, I get confused thinking about it.
Well, let's maybe shift that focus then. You kind of talked about it's not their job to get people yes or no. Do we think that what we have from the city of Edmond so far is going to have people educated properly when they do step up to make that vote? Because that's a big deal. They may think they're voting for one thing, and if the information's not all there, kind of having the three different questions there could be a little trip up for people. Do we think that the proper information is in the hands of the voters at this moment? We're getting pretty darn close.
I know we are trying to make sure people understand what they're voting on. I'm not sure we could do much more on our part to make sure that that's happening, but just making sure people understand what the tax increase is, the fact that it will be there, even if one of them passes, the same tax increase is going to be there. And then, the reasons that we believe that it isn't beneficial for the Edmond citizens.
And we can all agree we need public safety, we need roads. Can we not fund those things without this bond vote? Why is this the necessary way to do it?
Well, I think the answer is Edmond has up until this point, but we have 94,000 people in our community, and half of our city limits do not have any retail activity whatsoever. So we're at a crossroads where you can't continue to fund it with just sales tax. And it's evident by the fact that Edmond's the only city that's even tried to do it to this point. It's the only city that's even moved forward with sales tax only. And on top of that, we have the lowest sales tax in the metro. So the idea is there another way to fund it? Well, if you did it on sales tax, we know two things. Sales tax is volatile. Right now, Edmond's running 1.3% above last year's sales tax collections. So the idea is, well, inflation's higher than that. So how are you going to fund these projects? September of 24 is lower in collections than September of 23 for Edmond. So the idea of trying to bond sales tax are much more expensive. So the idea that you're going to have an efficient government and you're only going to do it by bonding sales tax, which is the most expensive way to fund it, seems inconsistent. So I'm sure there are other methods to fund it, but they're much more expensive. They're much more volatile. And there's a reason Every other city Edmond size has chosen GO bond funding for infrastructure. And what we're talking about here is public safety. It is safer roads for our children, for our fire protection, and for our police. It is the future of our community, and we have to invest in it to get there. That's where we're headed. Now, we'll get there one way or the other. We'll be friends after the election on November 5th because we're not going anywhere, right? I've been in Edmond since 1981. I went to high school in Edmond, and I choose to run my business and invest in my community. I believe property tax is the way to do that, because I believe it's the fairest way to do it, and I believe it has the least impact on the lower income people who are having trouble with housing as it is.
And that's a great point when you talk about, you know, these rising costs when it comes to those property taxes and values and the future, right? That's something that we've really heard get the drum kind of banged down here. It's not just about the decision that's going to affect this year, but it's for those homeowners down the road. How do you assess that now when you look at what this could potentially do and maybe some of the trickle down that could have to maybe renters and kind of other folks as well?
Absolutely, and that's part of what our thoughts are on this, is that it isn't going to just affect property owners. It will also affect those tenants out there, because many landlords are going to be forced to increase those costs. And I know their feeling is that it's not very much, and the landlord gets to decide whether or not they pass those fees on, but they probably are going to need to when we talk about what those kind of numbers are looking like. And I think that as far as the tax or the sales tax side of things goes, when you talk about that we are the lowest, I'm not saying we have the answers, but it is our thought that a sales tax is something that people get to choose whether or not they go and spend money somewhere, and whether or not they're going to pay, you know, for certain items, right? A property tax that is forced onto people that are already homeowners that did not sign up for that when they bought that home and did not plan on those costs. Those are things that are, that to me, an unfair tax, actually. They're not getting to make a choice about it, especially if they already own the home. And it was not factored into their cost at that time. And it's just a fairly substantial, 14% is a substantial increase in a property tax.
When you're talking to potential home buyers, are they asking about this?
Yeah, they have been more recently, especially as we've been getting the word out more about it, especially my people that are looking even right now for houses. And it is going to be something that they're a little bit afraid of how that's going to affect them in
an already volatile real estate market right now.
Well, and again, costs are just very, very high with all the escrow changes lately.
You know, I think it's interesting, and I certainly have tremendous respect for Julie and what she does for a living, but the reality of it is Edmond in the city limits is the 17th out of 18 tax districts in Oklahoma County. 40% of Edmond's school children live in Oklahoma City, and they pay a millage rate that would be equal to what this would be if it were to pass. Edmond would go from 17th to 12th out of 18 tax districts if this were to pass. So if you're that family looking, there's no cheaper place to go. So where are you going to go? You're going to go to Oklahoma City and Edmond schools? Well, you're paying higher than what Edmond's paying right now. Today you are. And then the idea about having property owners that benefit from Edmond and not pay their way. I'll give you an example. There's 2,000 commercial parcels in Edmond city limits, 2,000 business parcels. All right? If you raise their tax 15 mils, you would generate $3.6 million in revenue for the bonds. Now, if we say we're not going to tax the property owners, then we're telling you and you and you and me, we need to spend more money at those stores and generate more sales tax, because that property owner won't have to pay it. The property owner buys a building permit when they come to town, and they don't pay another fee to the city of Edmond. But they are heavy users. Take Walmart, take Sam's, take Home Depot. Heavy users of our infrastructure, heavy users of our police and fire. Who do you think uses more police and fire, my residents or Home Depot or the Walmart? Yet, if they don't pay a property tax, their property continues to appreciate. Their store at Danforth and Santa Fe, they bought it in 1999 for $2.6 million. Today it's worth $12.5 million, and they haven't directly paid a nickel to the city of Edmond, yet they have all the benefits you and I do. And now we're asking our citizens, hey, spend more and subsidize Walmart so that their property continues to go up and they use all the services. So that's why I believe there's an argument that it's a fairness issue. Because why would I want someone else to subsidize Walmart and make them spend more when we know you do have some choices in spending, some you don't. Groceries are not up for discussion. You have to have groceries. Most people have to have gas in their car and oil in their car, and when the car goes in the shop, they have to pay to get it repaired. Those sales taxes are going up. And by the number that's been discussed on the sales tax group, it goes from 8.25 to 9.5. That's a 15.15% increase in that tax. That is not going away. The landlord does not have the ability to deduct that from his taxes and therefore soften the blow to the tenant. And every person in that tenant household is going to pay that, whether they go buy ice cream at the store or they buy groceries or they go to the movie. Everybody's going to pay that. And the idea of what it's going to be, the average rental property in Edmond is probably in the $140,000 range from a tax assessed value. So you're talking around $20 to $22 a month.
I'd say that's pretty low, first of all.
Well, you have
But
to
yes.
factor in the multifamily
I've
property.
looked at rentals
I
lately.
understand.
Yeah, well, you have
I'd
to
have to
factor
look at-
multifamily,
right.
and there's a lot of existing product in the multifamily market that's significantly less than that. So, I mean, you can come up with a different number. The reality of it is that let's say the number is $175,000. You're talking $23 to $25 a month, not insignificant dollars. But at the same time, if I'm going to pay another 15.15% sales tax, that number's never going away for everybody in my household, not just at rent. And that's only if the landlord passes along dollar for dollar.
I
Do
think
you
that's a
agree
pretty
then?
high sales tax increase that hasn't, nobody's saying that we want it to be the very high, as high as that either, but I do think we have some room to go up without it being crazy. I also think you're talking about commercial right now versus residential. And while we do care about both, at the end of the day, the way that something affects a commercial owner versus how it affects a residential owner is pretty different. And I can understand some of the things you're saying on that, but I also think that we also want to create an environment where those companies want to continue to come to Edmond, and maybe it also fosters some growth within Edmond, that we are a place that maybe is a little bit more accessible for them to come and not have the same kind of property taxes that they experience some of the other places that these bonds have passed.
Yeah, I mean, your point is that this is the least regressive way to do this, that we've got to collect the money and this is going to cause the least harm.
Well, yeah, if you Googled what is sales tax, the first thing that comes up, it's a regressive tax. The lower your disposable income, the more punitive it is on your lifestyle. So the idea of affording a home, if you can't save money to buy groceries, the idea of affordability is much more difficult to obtain. So yeah, sales tax is a regressive tax. That's not Todd McInnes's idea, that's tax policy. Right? And so the idea of whether it's commercial or residential, it's all the people whose property is going up, it's significant in value, significant, 5, 7, 8% per year. So the idea of paying a little bit more to continue to rise that tide seems fair.
And I understand what you're saying too, right? Like the people who use those roads and use the services are the ones who should be paying it. They shouldn't just get a free ride. But is there not, I like this idea of commercial versus residential.
That's actually
where we
exactly
can-
what we're saying though, is
Yeah.
that everyone who uses the roads is not just property owners.
Correct.
It is everyone that comes into the city of Edmond, which the sales tax would actually benefit that more, whereas property owners in Edmond are the only ones paying for it when a lot of other people utilize those things
So
from the
they're
city.
unfairly being saddled with this.
Correct, versus everyone from Oklahoma City that comes in to the Edmond area and utilizes these things, they're not sharing the burden for that in this situation.
And no, you're no problem. And I think what I'm sort of interested in trying to get to, is there a way, because we've been talking about it for, I don't know, about 22 minutes now, that 14% number, there's some sticker shock for people. Is there not a way to make this a little more progressive and ease our way into this on the people so that it's not such a blow right out of the gate when this goes through?
Yeah, so the ballot initiative that's in front of us is 14.36 or whatever percent, because that's the bond package that's there. And that was the result of the task force that went through probably $400 million worth of projects and heard from the police department, heard from the fire department, hey, here's our priority. And here's from the traffic department or the engineering department, here's our priority. This is where we have pedestrian fatality. This is where we have wrecks. And so that was winning down from 400 to 231 million. And there's also the idea, well, how do you fund it? Is it a 7-year bond? Is it a 10-year bond? Is it a 5-year bond? And there was significant discussion in the room. And there was anxiety about, is that too high? Is it too low? Who's concerned about it? What drives people to the polls? What causes people to question it? So yeah, if this were to fail on November 5th, I would say if 2 out of the 3 fail, I would say you would see the city of Edmond come right back. I would guess, now it's not my decision, and they probably would look for another tax revenue. This infrastructure needs are not going away.
Right.
Matter of fact, they're getting more expensive every time we delay doing those things. This result of our road project, there's $35 million in there for the infrastructure because they've been tapping other sales tax sources to pay for that. So there's going to have to be a new revenue source. The city of Edmond has looked at development impact fees. It only takes 3 out of 5 city councilmen to put those in place. They will be significant, and they will impact housing affordability, or there'll be other revenue sources. So there may be,
Whole
there's
separate
always
issue we also would be.
So you want to sit
probably
at the
as a part
table
of.
and you're hoping to be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
If this fails, do you hope to have a seat and a say at maybe an alternative path to getting these projects funded?
If there are going to be things that impact homeowners in Edmond and affordability in Edmond, then yes, we want to be a part of how can we get there. right? And helping have a voice in that. And so yes, I think impact fees, things like that, that may come down the road. A lot of that's kind of been thrown out a little bit, in my opinion, to have some scare tactics. But if that is the direction that they decide to go, we definitely will, as a board, be looking at that and likely also be in opposition to that. I can't, obviously we haven't voted on that yet, but those are things that, you're right, would definitely affect affordability. We actually, the city did a study, and they spent about $125,000 on it. We gave money to that as the Edmond Board of Realtors to help fund an affordability housing study within Edmond, because we believe that it's a true issue. We just did that more recently, and we didn't really get anything from that from the city, but what we did get is this idea of increasing the tax on homeowners, and so we just can't really support both things at the same time. You know what I'm saying? So we just supported housing affordability study, and over here it seems like you're making it less affordable. We just can't, support both.
I'd like to hear more about the process of you guys really narrowing down which projects to fund, because while some of these, I think we can all agree, are absolutely crucial, not all of them are, right, Adam?
Yeah, it seems like there's even one in particular that stuck out to me was for the Veterans Memorial. No argument against a Veterans Memorial, right?
Yeah.
I think we're all on board there, but I think it's the funding for it. We've seen other cities around the area in the metro fund memorials or things like this, and they have been privately funded, didn't have to go through a tax. And in Edmond, it seems like that has been the case where people could donate to this or help make this happen. Doesn't that seem like not getting that funding is sort of already a vote of maybe this isn't what we need our money to go to right now?
This is $8 million, by the way, in this
Yeah.
package going for this memorial.
Yeah, I wish I could just replay all the dialogue that happened in the room when we're going through all these projects. I always say, I'm sure of the 25 of us that were there, everybody had different agendas when they got there. I mean, you've been on different boards. I'm sure people come in with, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And so the group, through like probably 13 or 14 hours of discussion over 4 meetings, looked at all kinds of projects, all kinds of quality of life projects. And there was a passionate argument for why the Veterans Memorial is so significant to Edmond, to Edmond's history. We look at some of our schools, Russell Doherty, Orvis Reisner, named after World War I and II heroes. And so the dialogue within the room was, yeah, that's important. And it wasn't one person that said it was important. At the end of the day, the whole package was approved unanimously by all 25 people in the room. And someone might argue, well, hey, that's $8 million, and it is. And it's 3.5% of the total package. So the dialogue was a give and take of some projects that I wanted to get done couldn't be done. There was conversations about Arcadia Lake, about circling the lake with a bike trail, but it's not owned by City of Edmond. It's owned by the Corps of Engineers, so that wasn't allowed. So all I can tell you is there was a very robust give and take about every project that was on there. A lot of people had a road project they were concerned about, and it didn't make it for whatever reason in the dialogue in the room. So there was wonderful veterans in our community. It's our history. It certainly is our history and will be our future, and the group felt collectively, unanimously, that it should be included in the list.
But I think where I'm trying to go with this is we could replace that with any project at all. And if we gave the public 5 years to crowdfund this and they didn't, that would to me be them expressing the fact that maybe this isn't the best use of our dollars in our opinion right now.
Well, and that came up because there was in the task force meeting room, there's 25 task members. There was probably 15 Edmond City staff members, and there was 2 gentlemen that came to every meeting, and they spoke at the end during the citizens. That was the room. And the question did come up, how much has been raised? And the answer was given by one of the staff people for the city of Edmond.
It's around $22,000.
And people were like, well, hey, do people want it or not? And then there was a discussion by one of the gentlemen who was very passionate about why he felt like it wasn't getting traction or whatever. So that was knowledge, that was information that we had at the time the discussion was made. So I understand it. I read the articles in the paper a couple weeks ago, and then I think about what are the projects that I'm involved in that nobody funded before I got there. I was one of the 5 people that started the Oklahoma City Marathon. Well, no one had done one before, so we really want one? Well, it turns out we did, right? And so to say that there wasn't someone doing it before is not an unfair argument, but I will tell you it was discussed in the room during our conversations.
All right, I'm sure there are people who, believe it or not, maybe still haven't made up their mind on how to vote or whether to vote yes on all 3 or no on all 3, or maybe vote yes on one and no on the other. Give us your final pitch. I guess we can start with Jim and with you, Todd, on what you want folks to consider at the ballot box.
We really are just trying to make sure that people understand the reality of the 14% plus increase, right? And the fact that's going to happen for all three. So you vote for one of them, even if you love the idea of a fire station, it's going to get that that tax increase, and it will be only for property owners, and it's a significant amount. At the end of the day, we're just here to get the word out about that thing, and that for us, we want housing affordability and attainability in Edmond. It's a problem right now, and I think the city acknowledges that it's a problem as well within our community, or they would not have just funded an affordability study trying to figure out how they can actually do something about it. And then they turned around and didn't do anything about it, but they chose this path instead, which will increase costs for people in an environment where you've got rising interest rates. Hopefully they'll start going down a little bit, but they've been high, insurance costs doubling, and the housing price increases. And again, we are about these things being done within our city. We recognize the issues that are there, and we in no way are saying a fire station isn't needed. You know, these things aren't important. We just believe that we can get there a different way and find solutions together in the future to create a path forward.
Yeah, a lot of passion for the city of Edmond from both sides on this, no doubt about it. All right, Todd.
Well, I would say we're on the same side about Edmond's future. So the conversation is simple to me. Edmond has an incredible legacy of investing in itself for infrastructure, police and fire safety, and quality of life. We're all the beneficiaries of it. And now's the time where we can no longer fund it with just sales tax. And so we're asking people to invest in our future with us. And the way to do that is to go and vote yes on all three projects. Vote yes for police and fire protection, safety in our children in their crosswalks, and safety on our streets, and our quality of life that will continue to cause our property values to go up and make Edmond the place everybody wants to come live.
It's really nice when you can end one of these with agreement, right?
I
Everybody
know.
agrees the future's bright here. We like the way that Edmond's going.
I
It's
like
just,
that vibe.
Yeah, it's just about the way that we're going to get there. And Todd and Jillian, we appreciate the time. A lot of
Good
great
insights.
information. We had a lot of questions. We know people watching this had a lot of questions. So we hope we got all those, or most of those answered. We know there's a lot on the table.
Yeah,
here.
on OKCFox.com, you can find all of our reporting on this issue as we've continued covering this for several weeks now leading up to the big vote, and we'll see what Edmond voters decide on Election Day. OKCFox.com for more. Thanks for joining us for this Fox 25 Town Hall. We hope that you are better informed as you head to the polls. Don't forget to vote this Tuesday, November 5th.